Nestled on the outskirts of a small town, the Silver Pines Motel was a relic of the past. Once a bustling getaway, it now stood faded and forgotten, with a flickering neon sign that buzzed like an angry bee. Local residents often warned travelers to steer clear, spinning tales of inexplicable happenings that made even the bravest soul shiver. But for weary road trippers, it was often their only option, and that evening, it was exactly what Claire and Jake needed. They arrived as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The rain had begun to fall, pattering softly against the windshield as they pulled into the gravel lot. The motel's exterior was worn, its paint chipped and its windows grimy. Still, they were grateful to find a place with a vacancy sign illuminated. Inside, the lobby was dimly lit, with a dusty carpet that muffled their footsteps. The air felt heavy, thick with the scent of mildew and something metallic. Behind the front desk sat a middle-aged man with a scruffy beard and deep-set eyes. He greeted them with a half-hearted smile. "Room for the night?" "Yeah, we'll take it," Jake said, glancing around nervously. The man slid a brass key across the counter. "Room 9. Just down the hall." His voice was gravelly, and he didn't offer any further details. Claire and Jake exchanged glances but didn't question it. They took the key and headed to their room, the fluorescent lights buzzing above them. Room 9 was small but functional, a double bed, a small desk, and a window that overlooked the parking lot. As they settled in, the rain intensified, drumming against the roof in a chaotic rhythm. They dropped their bags and turned on the TV, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling that clung to them. As night crept in, the storm raged on, and the power flickered. "Did you see that?" Claire asked, her voice tinged with anxiety. "It's just the storm," Jake replied, though he didn't sound convinced. A few hours later, Claire woke to a strange sound. It was a soft thumping, like something bumping against the wall. She turned to Jake, who was still asleep, oblivious to the noise. Hesitant, she got out of bed and tiptoed toward the sound. It seemed to be coming from the other side of the thin wall that separated their room from the one next door. "Hello," she whispered, pressing her ear against the wall. The thumping stopped abruptly, replaced by a low, almost mournful sound. It was a voice, faint but clear. "Help me." Claire's heart raced. She stepped back, returning to bed. "Jake." She whispered urgently, shaking him. "Wake up, there's someone next door." Jake groaned and turned away. "It's probably just the wind or something." "Go back to sleep," but sleep wouldn't come. Claire lay awake, listening intently. The rain battered against the window, and outside, the wind howled. Just as she began to drift off again, the thumping returned, accompanied by that haunting whisper. It was insistent now. "Help me." "Okay, this is ridiculous," Claire muttered to herself. Gathering her courage, she slipped on her shoes and decided to investigate. She crept to the door and opened it quietly, peering down the dimly lit corridor. Room 8 was the next door down, its door slightly ajar. She hesitated, then took a deep breath and pushed it open. The room was empty, the bed unmade and the air thick with a stale scent. As she stepped inside, the thumping grew louder, echoing from the corner of the room. Claire's breath quickened as she approached, finding a small wooden door that led to a closet. The thumping was now a frantic pounding, and she reached for the handle, trembling. "Hello," she called out, her voice shaky. "Is someone in there?" The pounding stopped abruptly. Silence engulfed her, stretching on uncomfortably. "Help me." The whisper was clearer now, almost pleading. Claire's instinct screamed at her to run, but something compelled her to stay. She turned the handle and opened the closet door. Inside, she found nothing but old clothes hanging lifelessly. But the sound had come from behind the wall, beneath the floor. She crouched down, pressing her ear to the cold, hard surface. Suddenly, the floor creaked beneath her, and the entire room felt like it was shifting. A chill raced down her spine, and she backed away quickly, heart pounding in her chest. Just then, she heard footsteps approaching from the hallway. Panicking, she slipped out of the room and closed the door just as Jake emerged from their room. "What are you doing?" he hissed, eyes wide. "I thought I heard something," she stammered, trying to catch her breath. "In there. I think someone needs help." "Let's just go back to our room," he said firmly, grabbing her wrist. "You're imagining things." Reluctantly, Claire allowed him to lead her back to their room. They locked the door behind them, and she tried to shake off the eerie feeling that lingered in the air. Hours passed, and eventually, they fell asleep. But Claire's dreams were filled with shadows and whispers, dark figures reaching out to her for help. She woke again in the early hours of the morning, drenched in sweat. The storm had subsided, but the atmosphere felt charged, like the calm before a storm. She turned to Jake, who was still sleeping soundly. Something compelled her to look outside. Pulling back the curtains, she gasped. The parking lot was eerily empty, save for a single old car parked at the far end. The driver's door was ajar. She felt a strange pull toward it, a mix of fear and curiosity. "Jake," she whispered, shaking him. "Wake up, something's not right." He stirred but groaned, turning away. Just 5 more minutes. Ignoring him, Claire slipped on her jacket and headed outside. The cool air hit her like a splash of cold water, and she walked cautiously toward the car. As she approached, she noticed the window was rolled down. Inside, the seat was empty, but the air felt heavy, charged with an unshakable dread. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning, she saw the motel owner standing at the entrance, a worried expression on his face. "You shouldn't be out here," he said, his voice low. "Why not? What happened to the people who stayed here?" Claire asked, her heart racing. The man's gaze shifted to the ground. "There are things you don't understand. The motel has a history." "What history?" She pressed, her curiosity getting the better of her fear. "The last tenant in room 8, he said slowly, went missing. People say she still wanders these halls, crying for help. No one knows what happened to her." Claire's stomach dropped. "But I heard her voice." The man looked at her intently. "You need to leave, now, before she decides to make you her next guest." Panic surged through Claire. She turned and hurried back to their room, heart racing. "Jake, wake up, we have to leave." Jake gradually opened his eyes. "What's going on?" "Get your stuff, we need to go now." She began to throw clothes into her bag, her hands trembling. As she packed, she heard a soft thumping again, echoing from the wall. This time, it was accompanied by a low, sorrowful wail. "Help me." Without thinking, she grabbed Jake's arm. "We have to go." Just as they were about to leave, the lights flickered and then went out, plunging them into darkness. "What the hell?" Jake exclaimed, his voice laced with fear. Claire clutched his hand, her heart racing. "We need to get out of here." They dashed to the door, but as Claire turned the knob, it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as they pushed and pulled, but it remained locked. The thumping grew louder, and shadows danced across the walls, taking shape. "Let us out," Jake shouted, slamming his shoulder against the door. Suddenly, the door flew open, and they stumbled into the hallway, but it was no longer the same corridor they had walked through earlier. The walls were darker, the air thicker, and the whispers grew louder, surrounding them. "Help me! Help me!" They ran down the hall, but the shadows seemed to stretch and twist, forming a labyrinth. Every turn led them deeper into the motel's heart, where the air felt suffocating. "Where do we go?" Claire cried, tears streaming down her face. "Back to the lobby," Jake yelled, leading the way. They sprinted toward the front desk, but when they arrived, the lobby was empty save for the old man, who now looked different, his eyes hollow and sunken. "You should have listened," he rasped, his voice echoing eerily in the silence. "Please, let us go," Claire pleaded, desperation clawing at her throat. "The motel needs you now," he said, a chilling smile creeping across his face. Suddenly, the door to the outside slammed shut, locking them in. The whispers intensified, drowning out their cries. Claire felt a cold hand brush against her arm, and she turned to see the ghostly figure of the woman from room 8, her eyes hollow and pleading. "Help me," she moaned, reaching out toward them. "No," Jake shouted, pulling Claire back as the woman advanced. "We can't help her." Claire's heart raced as she felt the oppressive weight of despair in the air. The walls began to close in, shadows looming closer, and she knew they had to escape. "This way," she yelled, dragging Jake back toward the corridor. They fled down the hall, following the twisting path until they reached the door that led to the rear of the motel. Without hesitating, they burst through it and stumbled into the cool night air. The rain had stopped, and the stars shone brightly above, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. They ran to their car, fumbling with the keys as they glanced back at the motel. But when they looked, the Silver Pines Motel was gone, replaced by a dark void, as if it had never existed at all. Breathless and shaken, they drove away, the weight of the night pressing heavily on their shoulders. As they left the town behind, the haunting whispers faded into the distance, but the memory of the woman's desperate cry echoed in their minds, a reminder of the shadows that lingered at the Silver Pines Motel, waiting for the next lost soul to wander too close. The Oakwood Motel had seen better days. Situated on the outskirts of a small town, it was known for its charming exterior and creaky wooden floors. But over the years, the charm had faded, replaced by whispers of unsettling occurrences that kept people away. Despite the local legends, a desperate traveler like Lisa had no other choice when her car broke down late one rainy evening. As she pulled into the gravel parking lot, the headlights illuminated the flickering neon sign. The motel's lobby was dimly lit, with a musty scent that reminded her of damp wood and dust. Behind the front desk stood a middle-aged man with tired eyes and a crooked smile. "Welcome to Oakwood," he said, his voice gravelly. "Roommate is available." "Thanks," Lisa replied, her unease growing. She took the key and headed down the dim corridor. Room 8 was at the far end, its door slightly ajar, as if inviting her in. Inside, the room was quaint but worn, the bedspread was faded, and the wallpaper was peeling. Still, it was a relief to have a place to rest for the night. As she unpacked her things, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the motel. After a quick shower, Lisa settled into bed with a book, hoping to distract herself from her thoughts. As she read, she heard a soft thumping noise coming from the wall adjacent to her room. It was rhythmic and persistent, like someone tapping a finger. She tried to ignore it, attributing it to old plumbing or settling floors. But then she heard a voice, a faint whisper, almost like a child's giggle. "Help me." Startled, Lisa dropped her book. "Hello," she called out, her heart racing. There was no answer, just the continued thumping. She considered calling the front desk but hesitated, unsure if she wanted to confront whatever was happening. As the night wore on, the noise continued, growing louder and more insistent. "Help me," echoed through the wall. Unable to take it any longer, Lisa finally decided to investigate. She slipped on her shoes and cautiously stepped out into the hallway. The motel felt different at night. Shadows danced along the walls, and the air was thick with tension. The thumping had stopped, replaced by a heavy silence. She approached room 7, right next door. The door was slightly ajar, just like hers had been. With her heart pounding, Lisa pushed it open. The room was empty, but the air felt charged, almost electric. It was dark, save for the faint glow of a streetlight filtering in through the window. On the bed lay an old, dust-covered doll, its glassy eyes staring vacantly at her. Lisa felt an inexplicable chill as she stepped inside, instinctively reaching for the doll. As she picked it up, a sudden rush of wind blew through the room, slamming the door shut behind her. "Okay, that's creepy," she muttered, her heart racing. Just then, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from her friend, asking if she had made it safely. Lisa's fingers trembled as she typed back, but as she glanced up, she caught a glimpse of something in the corner of her eye. A shadow darted past the window. "What the?" she gasped, spinning around. The door suddenly creaked open, and the man from the front desk appeared, his face pale. "Miss, you shouldn't be in here," he said, voice shaky. "Why not?" she shot back, confused. He stepped further into the room, glancing nervously at the doll. "That room's off limits. You shouldn't have gone in there." "What's going on?" Lisa demanded. "Is someone in trouble?" I heard a voice. His expression shifted, flicker of fear crossing his features. "You need to leave now. I can't explain. Just please." Lisa felt a mix of anger and fear. "I'm not leaving until you tell me what's happening." The man hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting something to appear. "Years ago, a family stayed here. They disappeared without a trace. The daughter. She had a doll like that one." He pointed at the doll in her hand. "They say she still lingers in this motel, looking for help." "Help? From who?" Lisa's voice trembled. "Anyone," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "The last person to stay in that room she went missing too. You're not safe here." Before Lisa could respond, the lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness. Panic surged through her. "What do we do?" she shouted, but the man was gone, leaving her alone. She dropped the doll and bolted for the door, pushing it open and racing into the hallway. The air felt colder, and a heavy weight pressed down on her. The whispers returned, louder this time. "Help me, help me." Lisa sprinted down the corridor, her heart pounding in her chest. She reached the front desk, but it was empty. "Hello, is anyone here?" she cried, desperation creeping into her voice. The lights flickered again, and she felt a presence behind her. She spun around, but no one was there. The whispers grew louder, echoing in her mind. "Help me." In a panic, Lisa turned toward the exit, but the door slammed shut. She frantically tried to pull it open, but it wouldn't budge. "Let me out," she screamed. Suddenly, the man appeared behind her, a look of horror on his face. "You need to run. She's coming." "Who?" Lisa shouted, but he was already pushing her toward a side door. "This way." They burst through the door into the night, rain pouring down. Lisa turned to ask him what was happening, but he was gone, vanished into thin air. Heart racing, she looked around. The motel loomed behind her, shadows flickering in the windows. The whispers echoed all around, and the wind howled like a wounded animal. "Help me, help me." With no time to think, Lisa took off into the woods behind the motel. The trees closed in around her, branches clawing at her skin as she ran deeper into the darkness. The whispers followed her, growing louder, more insistent. "Help me, help me." As she stumbled through the underbrush, she suddenly fell, sprawling onto the damp ground. Gasping for breath, she looked up and saw a figure standing among the trees, a girl, no older than 10, her clothes tattered and her hair matted. In her hands was a doll, identical to the one Lisa had found. "Help me," the girl said, her voice haunting and sorrowful. Lisa scrambled back, terror gripping her heart. "What happened to you?" she cried, but the girl merely pointed deeper into the woods. Realizing she had to help, Lisa got to her feet. "Okay, I'll help you. Just tell me what to do." The girl began to fade, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. "Find the truth. Find the truth." With that, the girl vanished completely, leaving Lisa alone in the dark. Heart pounding, Lisa turned back toward the motel, a new determination fueling her. She had to uncover the secrets hidden within its walls. Navigating through the trees, she returned to the motel. The front door was now ajar, as if inviting her in. She stepped inside cautiously, the familiar musty smell hitting her. The lobby was silent, and the air felt electric with anticipation. She moved toward room 8, feeling an irresistible pull. As she reached for the doorknob, she hesitated, fear creeping in again. But she had to know. She opened the door and stepped inside. The room was unchanged, but as she entered, the atmosphere shifted. The air felt thick, charged with an energy that made her skin prickle. Lisa looked around, her eyes landing on the doll she had dropped earlier. It was now sitting upright on the bed, staring at her. Suddenly, the whispers returned, surrounding her. "Help us! Help us! Who are you?" Lisa shouted, desperation in her voice. "What do you want from me?" The room darkened, and shadows swirled around her, coalescing into the figure of the girl. "You must find the truth," she said, her voice echoing eerily. "They are trapped." "Trapped? Who?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling. "The lost ones," the girl replied. "You must uncover what happened." With that, the shadows engulfed Lisa, and she felt herself being pulled into a vision. Images flashed before her eyes, scenes of laughter, a family gathered in the room, then a sudden darkness, screams, and finally silence. The parents were arguing, and the little girl was crying, clutching her doll. Then the scene shifted. She saw the family packing their things in a hurry, panic etched on their faces. The parents were fighting again, the girl's cries piercing through the air. Suddenly, there was a flash of light, and everything went dark. Lisa stumbled back, gasping for air as the vision ended. "What was that?" she cried. "What happened to them?" The girl's ghostly figure flickered. "You must find the truth. The doll holds the key." As the words settled in, Lisa felt a surge of determination. "The doll," she whispered. She rushed to the bed and picked up the doll, examining it closely. Beneath the fabric, she found a small latch. Heart pounding, She opened it to reveal a tiny compartment containing a crumpled piece of paper. Unfolding it, Lisa read the scrawled message. They took her. We didn't mean to leave. Find us. The room grew colder, and the girl's presence began to fade. You must tell their story. Help us find peace. Wait, Lisa cried, but the shadows whisked the girl away, leaving her alone once more in the darkened room. With a heavy heart, Lisa knew what she had to do. She had to tell the story of the family who had vanished from Oakwood Motel. As she left the room, she felt a sense of purpose guiding her. The whispers had quieted, but their plea echoed in her mind. She walked back to the lobby, resolved to find the motel's owner and demand answers. But as she reached the front desk, she froze. The man was there again, his face ashen. You shouldn't have come back, he warned, eyes wide. Why are you doing this? Lisa asked, frustration bubbling over. Why didn't you tell me the truth? He hesitated, glancing around as if expecting someone to appear. If you tell their story, it won't end well for you, he said, his voice low. They're not the only ones who linger here. Lisa felt a chill run through her. What do you mean? But before he could respond, the lights flickered again, plunging them into darkness. The whispers returned, louder this time, a cacophony of voices demanding to be heard. Help us, help us. In that moment, Lisa understood. The motel was a prison for the lost souls, trapped in an endless cycle of despair. And she was the only one who could break it. With renewed determination, she stepped closer to the man. I'm going to tell their story. I won't let you keep them here. His expression turned grave. You don't know what you're asking for. Try me, Lisa replied fiercely. The man stepped back, his eyes darting to the shadows. Very well, but know this. The truth comes with a price. Suddenly, the door to the motel burst open, and a gust of wind swept through the lobby, extinguishing the flickering lights. Lisa felt the weight of the shadows closing in, but she stood firm. I'm not afraid. In the chaos, she shouted, to whoever is listening, I will tell your story. I promise. The whispers paused, as if the spirits were taking notice. The shadows swirled around her, and she felt their presence, a collective sorrow mingled with hope. With one last glance at the man, who now seemed to shrink back into the darkness, Lisa bolted for the exit, the voices guiding her. As she burst outside, the night air was fresh and invigorating, the storm finally passing. She drove away from Oakwood Motel, the fading neon sign disappearing in her rearview mirror. Lisa knew she would return, but for now, she had a mission: to uncover the truth of the lost souls and bring their story to light. And as she drove into the dawn, the whispers transformed into a gentle breeze, carrying with them the hope of redemption, the promise of freedom for those who had been lost for far too long. Meadowview Motel had seen better days. Once a popular stop for families and travelers, it had fallen into disrepair, its peeling paint and flickering lights giving it a forlorn atmosphere. Located on the outskirts of a small town, it was surrounded by dense woods, where whispers of strange happenings circulated among locals. But when Alex and his friends pulled in one stormy night, they were unaware of the darkness that lay ahead. After a long day of hiking, the group was exhausted. As they entered the lobby, a bell jingled, announcing their arrival. An elderly woman sat behind the desk, her gaze distant. Room 3 is available, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Just be careful in the woods. Thanks, we will, Alex replied, shrugging off her warning. They grabbed the key and headed to their room, laughter echoing in the corridor. Room 3 was small and simple, with 2 beds and a faded floral pattern on the wallpaper. They quickly settled in, eager to unwind. As they exchanged stories, the rain began to pound against the windows, a rhythmic drumming that felt oddly ominous. Later that evening, after a round of cards and a few drinks, the friends decided to explore the property. They stepped outside, the air thick with humidity and the smell of wet earth. As they wandered into the woods, the trees loomed tall, their branches swaying in the wind. Suddenly, they heard a faint sound, like a child's laughter. Did you guys hear that? Sarah asked, her eyes wide. Probably just the wind, Tom replied, but he looked uncertain. Ignoring their unease, they pressed deeper into the forest, the laughter growing louder. It echoed off the trees, playful and haunting. Let's find out where it's coming from, Alex suggested, driven by curiosity. They ventured further, until they stumbled upon a clearing illuminated by a sliver of moonlight. In the center stood an old, rusted swing set, eerily out of place among the towering trees. The laughter stopped suddenly, replaced by an unsettling silence. "Okay, this is creepy," Sarah said, taking a step back. "Let's go back." But before they could turn around, the swings began to move on their own, swaying gently, as if someone had just gotten off. The air turned cold, and the group exchanged nervous glances. "Let's get out of here," Alex urged, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. As they retraced their steps, the laughter returned, but it now sounded distorted, echoing through the trees in a way that sent chills down their spines. They quickened their pace, hearts racing, desperate to escape the woods. When they finally reached the motel, they slammed the door behind them, breathing heavily. "What was that?" Tom gasped, his face pale. "I don't know, but we shouldn't go back out there," Alex said, trying to shake off the lingering fear. As the night wore on, the storm worsened, rain lashing against the windows. They tried to distract themselves with movies, but an oppressive feeling hung in the air. Just as they began to relax, a loud bang echoed from the bathroom. "What was that?" Sarah exclaimed, jumping up. "Probably just the wind," Alex said, though he didn't sound convinced. They cautiously approached the bathroom, and as Alex reached for the door, it swung open on its own. The air inside was frigid, and the light flickered. "This isn't funny," Tom said, stepping back. Suddenly, a soft voice called out from the darkness, "Help me." The friends froze, terror gripping them. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered. Before anyone could respond, the lights went out, plunging them into darkness. Panic surged through the room as they fumbled for their phones, turning on the flashlights. "Let's just get out of here," Alex shouted, but as they tried to leave, the door wouldn't budge. "Are we locked in?" Tom said, his voice shaking. "No way. It's just stuck," Alex replied, trying to push it open. In the eerie silence, the whispers returned, circling around them, intertwining with the sound of the rain. "Help me. Help me." They huddled together, fear taking hold as they struggled to pry the door open. Finally, with a loud creak, it swung open, and they stumbled into the hallway, desperate to escape the room. As they rushed toward the lobby, the old woman stood waiting, her expression solemn. "You shouldn't have gone into the woods," she said, her voice low. "What's happening?" Alex demanded, panic rising. Many have heard her laughter. "She never left," the woman said, pointing to the door of room 3. "She's looking for someone to play with." Just then, a gust of wind blew through the lobby, and the lights flickered violently. The friends turned to see a shadow darting down the hallway toward them, a small figure with dark hair and a faded dress. "Play with me," the child's voice rang out, sweet yet chilling. With adrenaline surging, they ran past the woman, bursting out the front door and into the rain. They sprinted to their car, frantically trying to unlock the doors. As they sped away, they glanced back at the motel, now looming ominously in the rearview mirror. The laughter faded into the night, but the memory of the child's voice lingered in their minds, a haunting reminder of the darkness that dwelled within Pine Hollow Motel. Days later, they learned that the child had gone missing years ago, and her spirit was said to roam the woods, searching for friends to play with. The friends vowed never to return to that cursed place, forever haunted by the laughter that echoed through the trees. All right, everyone, that brings us to the end of our story. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. And if you have similar stories you'd like to share with us, feel free to reach out. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.